to 9. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Morning to you.
Morning, and we're looking through the newspapers now with broadcaster Liz Kershaw and GBNEWS' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, who are with us again. Thank you very much. Liz, start with this BBC story over the Martin Bashir scandal, because this fascinates me.
Yeah, I worked at the BBC for 35 years, and just let me say, before any Twitter warrior wades in and says, oh, she's just bitter because she doesn't work there anymore, all the time I was there I tried to raise issues, including Jimmy Savile. Anyway, that's probably why I'm no longer there, because I've got the vote. But the BBC, I think the licence payers should know, if there are any watching GB News, because presumably they prefer GB News to the BBC. But there's the BBC management, it used to be full of charming, well-do, good, people who were sort of, oh, I don't understand what you're doing, but you're doing very well, so carry on. And once a year you get called in for a glass of red wine and a piece of cheese. Now it's full of career suits. And they seem to exist, I formed this opinion over about 25 of the years that I was there, to serve themselves. It's like a club that the people who actually make programmes don't actually belong to. Anne's nodding vigorously. And there's a whole cabal which seems to be set up to protect each other and each other's backs and each other's jobs. And we saw this with Savile. Nobody did anything at the time. Then when it came out, when he died, there was like a massive campaign to preserve Mark Thompson, the then Director General, Teflon Thompson, who was shipped off to the New York Times on $8 million a year to run that. Nothing stuck. There's been so many other scandals. This thing about Diana and Martin Bashir, we all know it was so horrific that they're all family who never explain, never complain, actually waded in and more or less said, along with Earl Spencer, Martin Bashir's actions led indirectly to the death of Diana, being divorced, no longer a member of the royal family, not having royal protection, dying in a high-speed car in Paris. And a couple of years ago, on the 25th anniversary, the questions started to be asked more about Martin Bashir's role in this scandal after Earl Spencer waded in. And the BBC said, oh, we have no documentation, we can't find these emails, we can't find this letter from Diana, we can't find these documents. Well, can you talk to Martin Bashir? Oh, we can't, he's had COVID, he's not fit to speak. And then the Telegraph's now reporting that the Freedom of Information Act was put in and hundreds of emails have had to be produced by the BBC. And it shows that they were having a very detailed dialogue with Martin Bashir at that very time when he was off sick, seen going out for a takeaway and a bottle of wine, seen in a nightclub, and he was actually answering the BBC's inquiries in detail. And his own spokesman now says that Martin completely cooperated with the BBC in 2020.
So they've been hiding behind
the management of
that he was too ill to speak to.
The management have lied. They were speaking
to protect the integrity of the BBC.
To protect the managers who were there at the time and the managers who were still there and somewhere linked to it, and just to protect the BBC's reputation. They're self-serving and they should be serving the licence payer. I had an experience on the funeral of Diana when I was reporting for 5 Live, which made me cry in the car on the way home, because I actually realised then that everything you see isn't the truth. And then on that day, there's no time to go into details yet, but I wrote a whole book about this, and I was told to report what wasn't happening, but they had a preset agenda of the day that they wanted this to be what was happening around the country. I said, I can't report that because it's just not what's happening, it's not the truth. Well, don't bother coming back if you don't bring us that. And that was a real wake-up call for me. So I'm just saying this is going to get murkier, because now questions are being asked by MPs.
Well, I hope they go ahead and ask more questions, because the BBC's culpability in all of this is certainly needs questioning, cross-examination.
Agreed.
Doesn't it?
Let's talk about a potential of having Lord Blair and Lord Brown.
Indeed. I mean, they, as former Prime Ministers, they're entitled really to have a peerage, but it hasn't come their way. But Keir Starmer is now talking about the idea of making them peers. The reason for this is he needs to create somewhere in the region of 100 peers to outnumber the Tories in the House of Lords. He's got in a bit of a pickle over this one because what the Labour leader is saying is he will abolish the House of Lords in the first term. I don't believe this is going to happen at all, and it's more likely that the laws will just simply carry on, and he will, over several sessions, assuming he becomes Prime Minister for long enough, create those 100 peers to redress the balance that they have there.
I mean, this highlights the issue with Keir Starmer, isn't it? People don't believe what he's saying.
Well, I mean, I think that on this one, certainly it's a bit peculiar because the logic just doesn't hang up. If you're going to abolish the Lords, abolish the Lords. But it is so complicated and so difficult to do. A lot of people have had a look at it. They don't reckon it's a good idea. It can even threaten the monarchy because the hereditary principle would go. But something's got to be done about the Lords. It's still the largest legislature in the world. Bigger than the China's People's Congress. So you really need to actually try and slim this one down.
Why aren't Tony Blair and Gordon Brown already in there?
Well, I presume they decided they didn't want to be. They must have turned it down because I mean, it's not an automatic thing, but it's pretty much automatic. If you're a former Prime Minister or a former senior cabinet minister, you kind of always get to the Lords. So I'm assuming they thought, we might have more influence outside, don't want to be involved in taking the party whip, that kind of thing. And that's why they didn't do it. Maybe they'll turn it down this time round. Maybe,
you never know. Let's have a look at the youngest boy band ever performing at Glastonbury, Liz, in The Guardian.
I love this story. I've got to be in my bonnet about bands, proper bands with guitars and drums and playing real instruments, not just for the type of music sound that produces, which I love. I'm going to see Guns N' Roses next Friday in Hyde Park. And I saw Bruce last week.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, Springsteen. Yeah. He's not a personal friend of mine. and there's a sort of decline in this. It's not just about the music, it's about kids getting together and making music rather than somebody sitting in the bedroom on their own with a computer. And this kid is Ellie Crossley is a member of a band called Askew, and they're playing the Glastonbury Festival because he played at a school function. And this guy, John Turner, who goes back with me 35 years to Radio 1 and record companies, he's now a big shot at Island Records, and he was in the audience for this school musical performance because he's got a kid there, and he was really impressed, and he saw that Ellie's dream was to play at Glastonbury. So he contacted the Eavis family who run Glastonbury, and these kids have never played a gig, but they were given a studio to practice it, and it's a great opportunity. And Eli says, I hope this we'll be able to record an album. I think we've got enough songs to do that. That would be the dream, and then we'd like to play more gigs and maybe play Glastonbury again. Well, of all the commercial rubbish that parts of Glastonbury has become, it used to be kind of hippie deal. It was started as a free festival in 1971 with David Bowie. It's, huge sponsorship thing and everything else. It'd be so nice and refreshing to see these.
How old are they?
Kids, about 13.
Oh my goodness.
These kids playing on the stage at Glastonbury. So if you're there, if you're going,
go and see them and
cheer them along. Or I hope they get featured on the BBC coverage.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I would have
It's a nice peg, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's just have a look at the Daily Star, Nigel. We could be heading towards 40-degree heat again this year.
That is what the paper is saying, which obviously, as you've been complaining about the heat last year in your home, that It's going to get even worse, Stephen. I mean, I think that this sort of high temperatures are going to be something constant. That scientists are now saying we're about to next year go over the 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, which is the target that was set for to stop climate change. So, although we won't suffer hugely in this country in the same way that other places are, where the Inuit will start falling through the ice in Greenland and Pacific Islands will suddenly be flooded, we are going to get...
We're going to get warmer, aren't we?
We're going to get warmer, long heat waves, more rainfall, more wildfires. We're going to notice it, is the point.
Yeah, we are.
We'd be able to grow vines in our back garden.
Yeah, like the Romans did, because it was hotter then.
It was, yeah.
Right, lovely. Thank you both, Nigel, Liz. Thanks very much indeed. Let's just